Do you know what the realm is? It's the 1,000 blades of Aegon's enemies. A story we agreed to tell each other over and over till we forget that it's a lie.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back for another Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire video. In this video, I would like to talk about our old friend Sir Gregor Clegane, who is also known as the Mountain That Rides. I'm sure all of you remember Sandor Clegane's enormously large brother, Gregor Clegane, from the show. Everyone knows how evil he was in the show, but believe it or not, his actions are far more disturbing in the books. He is easily one of the most vicious characters in A Song of Ice and Fire. Although most of this information is very dark, I find it to be interesting nonetheless because it does give us more insight into who the Mountain actually is. One of the very first things we learned about Sir Gregor is what he had done to his little brother, Sandor Clegane. In only Sansa Stark's second chapter in A Game of Thrones, the Hounds says, "I was younger than you, 6, maybe 7. A woodcarver set up shop in the village under my father's keep to buy favor he sent us gifts. The old man made marvelous toys. I don't remember what I got, but it was Gregor's gift I wanted. He had a wooden knight, all painted up, with every joint pegged separate, and it was fixed with strings so you could make him fight. Gregor is 5 years older than me, so the toy was nothing to him. He was already a squire, almost 6 foot tall and muscled like an ox. So I grabbed his knight, but there was no joy in it, I tell you. I was scared all the while, and sure enough, he found me. There was a brazier in the room. Gregor never said a word. He just lifted me up under his arm, and he shoved the side of my face down into the burning fire, and held me there while I screamed and screamed. You saw how strong he is. Even then, it took 3 grown men to drag him off me. My father told everyone my bedding had caught on fire, and our maester gave me ointments. Ointments. Gregor got his ointments too. 4 years later, they anointed him with the 7 oils, and he recited his knightly vows, and Rhaegar Targaryen tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Arise, Sir Gregor." Now, although it wasn't that much different from the show, I like that we got to hear the Hounds' version of this event. What I find very interesting about this story is what it said at the end. About 4 years after Gregor burned his brother's face, he became a Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, anointed by none other than Rhaegar Targaryen, Jon Snow's father. You would have never known this from only watching the show. This is ironic in a very sad and unfortunate kind of way, because Rhaegar knighted the man who would go on to commit some of the most horrific acts against his wife Elia and their children. I'm sure all of you remember what was said about this in the show, when Oberyn Martell arrived in King's Landing.
I'm asking you a question.
I've heard rumors.
So have I. The one I keep hearing is that Gregor Clegane the Mountain raped Elia and split her in half with his great sword.
I wasn't there.
Oberyn's scenes are some of my favorite moments from that season, but let me show you how it was described in the book. Now I will say, this was mentioned more than once in the books, but I want to look at what it says in Ned Stark's chapter when he thinks about Gregor Clegane, because I think this is when we get some chilling insight into the character. This is what it said in Ned Stark's chapter. Sir Gregor Clegane was the biggest man Eddard Stark had ever seen. Robert Baratheon and his brothers were all big men, as was the Hound. And even back at Winterfell, there was a simple-minded stable boy named Hodor, who was bigger than all of them. But the knight they called the Mountain That Rides would have towered over even Hodor. He was well over 7 feet tall, much closer to 8. With massive shoulders and arms thick as the trunks of small trees. Unlike his brother the Hound, Sir Gregor Clegane did not live in King's Landing. He was a solitary man who seldom left his own lands, except for when there were battles or tournaments. He had been with Lord Tywin Lannister when King's Landing fell, a new-made knight who was only 17 years old, even then distinguished by his size and his ferocity. Some said that it had been Gregor who dashed in the skull of the infant Aegon Targaryen against the wall, and whispered that afterward he had raped the mother, Elia Martell of Dorne, before putting her to the sword. These things were not said in Gregor's hearing, and I don't blame them whatsoever. Ned Stark could not remember ever speaking to the man, though Gregor had ridden with them during Balon Greyjoy's rebellion, but he was only one more knight among 1,000 others who fought that day. Ned Stark was looking at Sir Gregor with a bit of distress. Let's face it, the mountain made most characters nervous. Now, this is where things get really sinister. It said, Eddard Stark seldom listened to gossip, but the things said of Sir Gregor were more than ominous. He was about to be married for a third time, and one heard dark whisperings about the deaths of his first 2 wives. Now just wait, it gets even scarier. It was said that his keep was a grim place where servants disappeared unaccountably and even the dogs were afraid to enter the hall. Alright, now actually think about that for a second. This man not only killed several of his wives, but even the servants would disappear unaccountably. I mean, this man is basically the Westeros version of a serial killer. It says that even the dogs were afraid of him, and that's insane when you consider that dogs are actually the sigil of his house. Now imagine if the direwolves were afraid of the Starks, or if the dragons were afraid of the Targaryens. That just doesn't seem right, because we all know they have this amazing connection to those animals. But Sir Gregor Clegane is something else. If anyone or anything is an animal, it's him. In the most disturbing sense of the word. This wasn't everything Ned Stark has heard though. It gets even worse. Ned also thinks about how the Cleganes had a younger sister who died under very suspicious circumstances. He also thinks about the hunting accident that had killed their father. This is how the Mountain was able to inherit the keep, the gold, and the family's estate. The day this happens is also the same exact day Sandor Clegane leaves home forever to take service with the Lannisters as their sworn sword. I don't blame him either. Thanks to his brother, his entire family is gone. Their childhood home has now basically become a haunted house. Anyone who goes there ends up missing or dying under suspicious circumstances. None of this was mentioned in the show, but now you can see why the Hound hates his brother so much. It's not only because he shoved his face in the fire, but it's also largely because of what he had done to their younger sister. I believe this is why Sandor Clegane ended up growing so close to Arya and even Sansa. He did not want what happened to his sister to happen to them. Now, I wish they would have brought this up in the show, because it would have helped fans understand why it had to be the Hound who fought the Mountain in the end. This is why he would say his hatred for his brother kept him alive.
I reckoned you were gonna die by the time I loaded you on the wagon, but you didn't. Now, I reckon you die a dozen more times over the next few days, but you didn't. What kept you going?
Hate.
If you haven't read the books, then you might not know this either, but many fans believe Sir Gregor no longer has a head under his helmet. After the Mountain fights Oberyn, he slowly begins to die because of the poison that Oberyn had on the tip of his spear. Cersei informs Qyburn that as soon as Sir Gregor dies, he is to then bring her the skull, so she can send it to Dorne. Since Gregor Clegane killed Elia Martell and her children, Tywin Lannister swore that he would send them his head. So that's what Cersei has done. The alleged skull of Sir Gregor is brought to Sunspear, and it is thought to be one of the largest skulls ever known to man. But it still could be a fake. No one actually saw Qyburn remove the Mountain's head, but that also doesn't mean it's not gone. Most would assume that the Mountain is now dead. Now, after Cersei's Walk of Shame, Qyburn introduces the newest member of the Kingsguard. He doesn't refer to him as the Mountain anymore either. He now goes by the name of Sir Robert the Strong. The other members of the Kingsguard notice that whoever is inside the massive armor no longer eats any food, drinks any water or wine, nor does he go to the bathroom. They also can't see inside of the helmet. In the very last chapter of the last book, things begin to get even more ominous about the character. Mace Tyrell says, "Where did this man come from? Why have we never heard this name before? He does not speak, he will not show his face, and he is never seen without his armor. Do we even know for certainty that he is even a knight? We do not even know if the man is alive."